Hello and welcome to the MCG for Willow Talk Extras, wrapping up day one of the fourth test of the border-gavaskar trophy. Izzy Westbury here, and today I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Mark Taylor. Tubby, how about that day of test cricket, that day of Boxing Day test cricket?
Well, we've said it a couple of times, haven't we, throughout this series, that we've had a great day and an extraordinary day. We had another one here today, 87,000 plus people, MCG, watching a test match day of cricket. A young fella on debut, 19-year-old, making a run and ball half century. Me personally got to present him with a cap, which was a great pleasure for me, a delight for me.
More insights on that in a moment.
So I've got to say I thoroughly enjoyed the day, and I think anyone who came today or watched at home or listened to our coverage at home would have absolutely loved what they saw today.
I must say I had quite a few texts coming in through various assorted hungover lads and lasses who've made the journey over early doors, and they said, "Oh, I tell you what, it was worth it," and I think it was. So Australia end the day 6 for 311 at stumps. Pat Cummins, he won his first toss today as well, first toss of the series. Elected to bat, and then it was pretty much about one man, Sam Konstas, the Sam Konstas show. He made 60 from 65, but it was the way in which he did it that really sparkled. Test debut, ramping, lapping, charging India's attack. And let me just remind you, that includes Jasprit Bumrah. Usman Khawaja made 57, Marnus Labuschagne made 72, so batters that are really struggling for form, coming back into it. And Steve Smith at the end of the day with an unbeaten half century in front of, delighted to say, nearly 90,000 at the MCG. So it's a non-Ashes record. It was really quite the day of Test cricket. I mean, for many, better than Christmas Day, but we can have that debate later. Sam Konstas, 19-year-old, he walks out into the bowels of the MCG without a care in the world. What I really, really want to know, Tubby, is you got the tap on the shoulder yesterday, about just before midday, Christmas Day. You were tucking in a few glasses of Shiraz.
Yeah.
And they said, right, could you do the baggy green cap presentation?
Yeah.
What on earth did you say to that young man?
Oh, I walked up to him and I said, look, if I'm taking on Bumrah, I'm going to ramp him and do all sorts of stuff.
I knew it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, not. Look, I didn't have any advice about how to play Bumrah, I can tell you right now. All I did say to him was, you've been picked for a reason. You've been picked because you've made 100 at every level of cricket he's ever played, it from 5th grade right through to 1st grade, state cricket, junior cricket, school cricket. He's made hundreds. I said, you're here for a reason. You deserve your spot. Just go out and play the way you want to play. That's not the way I would have played today by any stroke of the imagination. But he had the intestinal fortitude to do that, to take it on. Played and missed, I think, 4 of the first 6 balls he faced from Jasprit Bumrah, and then thought, well, I'm either going to nick one here and get out for a low score, or I'm going to ramp. I'm going to charge, I'm going to slog him back over his head, and if I get out, well, so be it. I prefer to do that than nick one behind, and he got away with it today, so full credit to him.
So what we're saying is the headline here should be, Mark Taylor, former Australian captain, says he fell 40 runs short.
Well, what it should say is that the young fellow of today summed up the modern day of Test match cricket, of cricket in general. Players these days come into sides and they don't have all the fear that maybe players of yesteryear had, because we all felt we had to play a certain way.
Yeah.
With T20 cricket, the evolution of the game, the scoring rates have gone up and up and up. The bats have got better, so the ball goes further. All that sort of stuff has made, I think, young players in generally more aggressive in the way they want to play. And all they're doing now is bringing that to the game. We've seen it with England, with Bazball, and now we're seeing it with a young fellow today for Australia.
Well, I want to come to that point, the Bazball point. Is that at lunch there's a lot of discussion about whether Sam Konstas should sort of owe what he's doing, or Australia should ride off the coattails of Bazball. Should Bazball be taking credit? And my view is, yes, Bazball was possibly like the first way in which a whole team approached Test cricket, but actually, as you say, Tubby, this is the modern way. This is the way in which these young kids are coming in. I think he was born after the 2005 Ashes, Sam Konstas, which is slightly alarming. But if you're brought up on limited overs cricket, on a fast pace, the strike rates in Test cricket are going up and up and up and up, it's not Bazball that should be taking credit for. It's the era of these young kids.
And that's exactly right. And to me, Bazball takes a little bit of credit, yes, because it frees up players. It takes away a bit of accountability for them. So they don't feel the fear of running down the pitch to Bumrah and losing their middle stump, or donging one up in the air and getting caught and then being chastised and dropped. That's been taken off the table. That frees you up as a player. But to me, it's only partly the reason, because I don't think it needs to be played all the time. And it might work for Sam Konstas today, but I hope that he doesn't feel, and I'm sure he won't, that that's the way he needs to play all the time. He might get Jasprit Bumrah all the time on a seamy, bouncy deck at the MCG. He might get a good wicket at the SCG next week. You don't have to play that way all the time, and I think that's where you've got to find a balance between Bazball and the modern day game and some of the traditional values of the game, which still is making big scores, making hundreds, and that's what wins your test matches.
Well, that was almost the most remarkable bit of it as well, is that throughout this whole series, Jasprit Bumrah has absolutely dominated. And we saw the way in which Konstas batted with his ramps and coming down the wicket to those kind of bowlers. He got under the skin of a number of Indian players, and we saw that in the sort of the more volatile players. We can get onto a particular moment in a sec, but Kohli and Siraj visibly. Bumrah's not the kind of person that gets visibly riled, but he was put off his lines and lengths. We saw players taken out of the slip cord and put down a fine leg and deep third. I mean, it almost felt calculated. It wasn't just a free-for-all by the young man.
No, he said before the game that he was going to be aggressive. He was going to give something back to the bowlers. Now, I don't think any of us thought he was going to do what he did today, but he thought that was his best option. That was his best chance of making it runs, and it proved to be correct. What it did do then is that all the bowlers, even Bumrah, changed their lengths and their lines a bit. The field changed, which you expected it changed a little bit, but not as much as it did. And all of a sudden, those first few shots meant a big change in what was going on out there. And even Usman Khawaja at the other end thinking, oh, this is great. All of a sudden now the pressure's off me. So he changed the game in that little small moment. And that's what you need to do in Test match cricket.
Well, for both of their first 30 runs or so, there was Khawaja, for much of it actually, was ahead of Konstas in terms of strike rate. And I wonder, was this then therefore in the backs of the minds of the selectors in making what was quite a drastic change, dropping a test debutant McSweeney himself after just 3 tests and saying, right, we're going to bring in this 19-year-old. Was it about that partnership at the top of the order rather than just the player?
I think it might have been a bit of both. I think they really wanted someone to get the innings going, because it's very difficult, I think, when you've got a fine bowler like Bumrah and you've got pitchers, as we've said before, doing a bit, the ball's doing more. If you're going nowhere and even if you're seeing off ball after ball after ball, eventually then you get out. The next guy that comes in thinks, wow, it's a minefield out here. So you do need someone to take the bit between the teeth at times and say, I'm going to be the one to change the game. And that's what Konstas did today, and that's why the selectors, I think, threw him in there. I don't think they expected him to do exactly what he did today, but that certainly helped.
Well, if anybody expected to see what we did today, they can read the lottery numbers the next time. There were some amazing statistics that came out of that. Bumrah hasn't been hit for a 6 in Test cricket for 4 years. There's only 2 players in Test cricket that have hit multiple 6s off him. That would be Joss Buttler with however many Test caps behind his name, and Sam Konstas, whose career so far has constituted 65 balls. So he belongs to a number of very short lists at the moment. What about the crowd? I mean, a lot of the people here would have come in on early flights. They would have been hung over after the Christmas day. I mean, how was the reaction here?
Oh, well, they would have absolutely loved that. I flew up from Sydney today, or down from Sydney today, I suppose you've got to say. And I sat next to an Indian fellow who was just coming down for the day. And he's flying back tonight. And he was hoping for a great day of Test match cricket. He would have loved what he saw. I'm sure he probably would have liked India to be in a slightly stronger position, because I think Australia certainly won the day. But I think he would have enjoyed being here today. That's what
I really thought. I talked to a number of Indians coming into the MCG, half of whom seemed to have flown over from the US, which again was remarkable in itself. It was certainly a sort of destination, almost a bucket list test. But it was definitely an appreciation, even if it wasn't going the way of what was probably a majority Indian crowd here. They were here for the cricket, and my goodness, what a show was put on. Now, there was one moment, and I think we've expressed on this pod already that the likes of Siraj and getting riled up and in the face, I'm pretty pro that. We like hard, tough cricket. But there was a moment where Virat Kohli, who's mid-30s, I think from having seen it, made a beeline for Konstas in between. It was about the end of the 10th over. He was just walking back to the middle of the crease, and he made a beeline for him, and he shoulder charged him slowly, but it seemed very intentional to me. Is that poor form, play on? What are your thoughts on that, Tubby?
I think it's poor form. It's not play on, because something needs to be done about it. I'm not suggesting for a minute you wipe Virat Kohli out for the rest of the series. I don't think that will happen. But there needs to be some statement made that that's not appropriate. There's no doubt in my mind, and Virat I could see was gesturing out there that Konstas might have shouldered him. Well, I don't believe that. I don't believe a player on debut is going to shoulder a guy who's played 122 Test matches and one of the most revered cricketing figures around the world. I think it's definitely, there was no doubt Virat Kohli did head towards Sam Konstas looking to make some contact. It wasn't much in it. It wasn't a massive shoulder charge, but he wanted to upset the young Australian opening batsman. And you can upset players, that's fine, it's Test match cricket, but you cannot make contact with them. And I think if we allow that to go through, that just opens up Pandora's box for other players in the future to do exactly the same thing. And that's the danger, because that sort of thing will eventually turn into a batsman then going whack with the bat, and then you'll have something like an all-in brawl. We don't want that in Test match cricket.
It's that small measures of escalation that could ensue. And, Kohli is an icon of the game and certainly a role model to whom a number of kids watching on will have looked up and do look up to. It's almost ironic that it was, the 19-year-old was the man that seemed to have to keep his calm and his cool. But I'm not going to speculate as to what will happen to Kohli, because we know that there is a process in place. There is an ICC code of conduct. It's up to the match referee. It's very clear about any form of inappropriate physical contact is prohibited in cricket.
And so it should be.
So you would expect a consequence. The question really is what degree of consequence will ensue. So it'll be match referee Andy Pycroft. He will have to, he has the awful task really of having to decide after the day's play whether it will be a level 2 or a level 1 offence against the player, and then they'll get a number of points against them according to how grave the situation is. And you know what? It could result in a suspension, or it could be a fine. That's up to the match referee. It'll be interesting to see what does happen, but I can't imagine that he'll get away scot-free considering what we saw.
No, and I don't think he should either. But I don't think we won't see Virat Kohli at the SCG. I think everyone in world cricket, and particularly in Indian cricket, will want to see Virat Kohli at the SCG for the final Test match of this series. So I'll be extremely surprised if he gets a suspension from the game. But I think something needs to be done. A point needs to be made. Even if it's a fine, I think there has to be some point to say that is not appropriate behaviour. And particularly from a guy who has played 122 Test matches and captained his country. And I've got to say, I've always been a huge fan of Virat Kohli. From the moment I was lucky enough to interview him 10 years ago when he first came over here as a captain of the Indian cricket side, I've always looked up to him as a great leader in the Indian side. But what he did today was not right. And people have got to put that... People make mistakes. Virat Kohli makes mistakes, but it needs to be pointed out and he needs to be held to account.
Well, he's adored in Australia precisely because of the way he plays cricket, I'm sure, and we do hope to see him in Sydney, but it will be interesting to see what the repercussions are of that. Now, we talked about the Big Bang Australian debutant. There are a few changes in the India side as well. Shubman Gill, he was dropped almost to strengthen India's bowling when really it's their batting that's under scrutiny.
Yeah,
perhaps seemed odd.
A bit strange that. They must be disappointed with the way he's been getting out, because let's face it, it's been a tough batting series for both sides. Neither side at the top has really done all that well. So it's a little surprising to me that he's been dropped, particularly when you say they've really only got 4 out-and-out batters. They've got Rishabh Pant now at number 5. And then they've got all-rounders at sort of 6, 7 and 8, which sort of, I suppose if they're adding them all together, they're saying, well, that's a good combination. And it may well be the case. We don't know until both sides have batted on this track. But there's no doubt the Australians were feeling that India are 1 out-and-out batsman short, at least at this stage. So if they can make inroads into that top order, they'll feel they're a real chance.
And that's another thing about the way in which Konstas batted today, is that you almost had to reassess the pitch after he departed. Because the way in which the pitch at first, they played and missed a huge amount of the openers right at the start. And it really felt like a really good bowling deck. There was a bit of grass on it, it was coming through, variable bounce, etc. But I thought the people that are going to benefit the most is Scott Boland looking on and thinking, actually, there's a bit of something in that. And I guess we'll find out in the next innings.
We've only got to see how Alex Carey got out late in the day. He made 31 look really good and got an absolute brute of a ball from Akash Deep, which bounced and seamed away. So I think there'll be movement in this pitch right throughout the game. There's enough grass on it, and I think we'll see movement.
And one man who was on the receiving end of some of that movement, and I do feel for any gents out there, because, my goodness, he got a few cherries right where his box is. Gee.
And I understand that today you got some further education on the English language Australian style, Triple M style, of the name for that area where the box is
Well, we
kept.
all have our euphemisms, but honestly, it felt like there was a traceable it. But he did really well in a way to kind of, you must lose your concentration when that happens.
It does.
Surely.
It does bring tears to your eyes. Is he? Yes.
Yes,
So,
I can well
but
imagine.
Marnus did well. Marnus got quite a few in the nether regions, as we call them sometimes. But he played very well, and even though he departed for 72. People say, but he started the rot because he got caught at mid-off by Virat Kohli. I like the intent. I like the fact that he was going after the bowlers today, trying to grab the opportunity and trying to keep that initiative that was gained early on day one into the second session. So I don't have a problem with his dismissal today. I like the fact he was far more proactive than what we've seen from him throughout the series so far.
Khawaja, Labuschagne, Smith, all in the runs, all made half centuries, Smith still in. Is there something specific that's clicked between those three that were lacking before?
Well, I think that in a way they've followed Konstas' lead today. The fact that he took on Bumrah. Bumrah's first 8 overs done for 41. I think his next 12 overs he's got 3 for 35 or something like that. That's the difference between what Konstas did and what everyone else did. But I think the older blokes were dragged along by the young guy, which often happens. You bring a guy in who doesn't have all the scars, doesn't care about exposing his stumps or playing audacious shots, and all of a sudden the older blokes who every ball looks like a minefield to them say, well, hang on, maybe we should be getting on with it a bit more. So I think he brought those older fellas along today.
Actually, some of my favourite moments from the way in which Konstas was batting was when the camera panned to Khawaja at the other end, and he was just sat there giggling. He was like, this is absolutely brilliant. And it'll be interesting to see sort of once this series is done and dusted, that we might look back. I mean, today all the talk will be about Konstas and his innings. But this could almost be the turning point, the way in which he's revitalised its Australian team. He took on the bowlers in a way that Australia had been almost searching for beforehand. And actually it's the effect, the impact that he's had on the rest of the team rather than his own batting that will be the key to success.
And the other good news from an Australian point of view is they've got McSweeney, who's obviously not here because of Konstas, but he's back playing Big Bash, making a few runs. His confidence is up. Sure, he got dropped after 3 test matches, but he's now a test cricketer. So he's now been blooded. He's now ready to come in because Khawaja won't be playing forever. So we've now got 2 openers who are now been into the series, playing against the best in the world, who are going to be better cricketers for the experience.
But it might even be the case that he's not best suited as an opener, which he doesn't do in Shield cricket or in white ball cricket. And there'll certainly be openings in the near future. I mean, this team is probably at the latter stages of its career for many of them than the nearer. But yes, so many interesting things. What a day, what a morning's cricket here at the MCG. We're going to move on to our final segment topic. We could talk about this for ages, to be honest, but the Secret Cricket Club questions have some really good ones at play here. So James asks, well, I mean, I feel he's only faced 65 balls so far, but is Konstas Australia's next long-term opener?
Well, at the age of 19, of course, the answer is yes. But he'll be like every other cricketer. He'll have his good times and his bad. He's off to a terrific start. There's no doubt about that. The great news is that he's 19 years and 79 days old or something like that. So he's got time on his side now. He could actually have a lean drop, which I don't hope he does have, but he probably will at some stage. But he could get dropped, but you can come back at 19. So that's the good news about getting a guy in early, is they've got time on their side. So it was a brave selection. The selectors should feel obviously delighted with what happened because A, he made some runs, and B, Australia have got an opener, at least for the near future and hopefully for many years to come.
Some bright prospects in the game, and certainly he's one of them. Greg asks, oh, interesting. If you were Konstas' batting partner, would you have done more to defend him after the Kohli incident? Now, I saw Usman actually go and put his arm around Kohli, I think, and sort of say, mate, calm down. I thought he did almost everything that was asked of him.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have done what Usman would have done. I think I would have moved in and just got got him out of there. I wouldn't have gone up and embraced Kohli because I think Kohli was in the wrong, to be totally honest. I think it probably made Kohli feel better, and I think Usman did a great job to diffuse the incident But I think I would have just got Konstas out of there because I don't think he really wanted it. I'm sure, as I said a moment ago, that a guy's playing his debut Test match, the MCG, is looking to run into a legend of Indian cricket. So I would have just got him out of there.
Now, Boxing Day, of course, is a lot of it's about the cricket going on at the MCG, but also it's about backyard cricket happening all over the country. And Noel asks a really pertinent question in that regard. How many windows are going to be broken, tears shed, arguments had as the attempts at ramp shots increases by 800% all over houses and backyards across the country over the next week?
A lot. I think not just over the next week, over years to come. Even Greg Blewett, who works with here at Triple M, he's talking about his son telling me, Dad, I want you to teach me how to play a ramp shot. And Greg's saying, no, I'm going to teach you to keep the left elbow up and hit the line. He goes, no, I want a ramp. I want to do this. So there will be a lot of broken windows, dented sheds, tears, all sorts of stuff. I think it's a wave that none of us can stop, unfortunately.
And it's amazing, really, as well, how things can go so viral these days. I think I was talking to one of the social media producers in the box down the hallway, and she was saying that at the beginning of this test, so this morning, Sam Konstas on Instagram, so social media, had 6,000 followers. And at the moment, they're tracking he's got about 60,000 in the course of a few hours. So, I mean, he's gone viral. Here's an interesting one. John asks, Mark, who presented your cap?
Well, in my time, you didn't get your cap presented. It's
quite a new tradition.
It came in a bit of a box. You got your shirts, your vests, your jumpers, your tracksuit, all in a big box from Cricket Australia, or the old ACB it used to be called. And in there was your baggy green cap. So in actually 1994, when I took over the captaincy of the Australian cricket side, I actually started grabbing the caps.
So you started it?
I started that, yeah. So I presented the cap. I think Colin Miller in Pakistan. I can't remember which test match was the first one I think I presented.
So you're saying that you presented the cap to Colin Miller, 30-something years
30 years ago, yeah. Yes.
And now you've presented it to 19-year-old Sam Konstas. That's quite a span there.
Yeah, and I've done Shane Watson, and I've probably done a few more. I've done a couple now, so yeah. And as I said a moment ago, it's a great delight for us, a privilege and a pleasure for us old blokes to get a chance to do that.
We should track down who you presented caps to, because I reckon that would make a handy cricket team out there. One to just dampen things down or hold back Australia's jubilee at the moment is Lachlan asks, and this is interesting because Australia at one point they lost 3 wickets for just 9 runs. He says, have Australia wasted the start they got off to?
Oh, look, Lachlan, I don't think so. No, I felt on that pitch today there was always going to be a moment where the ball would win over the bat. And I think Australia at 2 for 237 at one stage were way above odds because of that start that Konstas gave. That 1 for 112 at lunch was a position I don't believe Australia thought they were going to be in when they saw the first couple of overs. So they were ahead of the odds, and then, as is often the case, 1 wicket leads to 2 or 3, and when you've got a bowler of Bumrah's capability out there, you're going to lose a couple of wickets. So I don't think they've thrown it away by any means. Sure, they would love to be 2 or 3 down for 300, but I'm not surprised they've lost 6 wickets today.
It seemed almost part of the ebb and flow of Test cricket, inevitable really, with such a fantastic day behind us. So yes, Australia 6 for 311. And the final question of the day goes to Alistair, who says, what was your favourite Christmas present this year?
Oh, I got some nice ones this year.
Not a bottle of Shiraz.
I got a couple of those.
All right.
No, but I got a travel fishing rod. Was my last present. Love my fishing, so that was very nice to get.
A few others in this box as well. I got a couple of nice earrings from. I'll tell you what, Laura Westbury. She was listening in with a couple of Pinot Noirs behind her.
Lovely.
Late in the evening back in the UK, and she said, "Oh, this Konstas kid. He's all right.
Going to be okay?
He's going to be all right.
So he's passed the test,
There we go. The Laura Westbury test. You heard it here first. That is the end of day 1 at the MCG, the Boxing Day test. I'm Izzy Westbury. Mark Taylor beside me. Thank you very much. And join us again tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks for watching the Willow Talk podcast on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't have to miss an episode wherever you are. And while you're at it, check out these videos up here. They're mostly good.